Good morning. I'd like to begin with our land acknowledgement. I'd like to recognize that the area that we call the Fraser Valley Regional District has been home to Indigenous people for generations. There are 31 communities with reserve land in the FERD's jurisdiction and as many as 69 groups with interest in the area. We honor our commitment to collaboration, inclusion, and reconciliation in our work here today and call to order the January 16th meeting of the Regional and Corporate Services Committee meeting. First item, Ms. Kinnaman.
Thank you. Looking for approval of the agenda, and late items.
That is moved by Director Pranger and Director Victor. All in favor? So that carries. Next item, please.
4.1 is the draft Regional and Corporate Services Committee meeting minutes of December 5th, 2024.
We have a mover, Director Horn, Director Castle. All in favor? So that carries. Next item, please.
Item 5.1 is the FERD Intergovernmental Relations Committee terms of reference. There is a motion for your consideration.
Do we have a motion? Director Siemens and Director Smith, any comments, questions? All in favor? So that carries. Next item, please.
5.2 is the FERD Flood Resiliency Committee terms of reference.
So there's a motion there. Somebody willing to move the motion? Director Pranger, Director McEhonick. Any questions, comments? Director Horn and then Director Castle.
Sure, thank you. Just a couple of questions, and this relates to this item and the next item, both of my questions too. First of all, just curious kind of how these committees come about, and what impacts, if any, these might have on staff work plans.
Sure. Through the chair to Director Castle. Through our procedures bylaw, the chair of the board is able to establish any committees that they deem fit. So with the election of Chair Ross in November, and through some contemplation about what the organization's needs are, the two committees were proposed for 2025. The Intergovernmental Relations Committee, as well as the Flood Resiliency Committee. I would just see that Chair Ross, who's joining us via Zoom today, so that's why we have Vice Chair Clute chairing the meeting, but she is available to speak to both of those if you wish.
Thank you. Did you want to go first? Director Ross has her hand.
Hi, good morning, everybody. So yeah, I'll just explain the flood resiliency one in particular. So obviously, I don't need to explain the importance of this issue. I think we're all aware of that. But another reason for establishing this is that Metro Vancouver Regional District has a flood resiliency committee, and they're doing a great deal of work. They're looking through they're creating work plans. They're looking through gathering together all the studies that have been done to date. They're not creating new ones, just evaluating all the other ones. And I believe advocating to the provincial and federal government for their needs. So I thought it was really important that we have the same kind of committee and work cooperatively with Metro Vancouver as well. I did have a great conversation with Dylan Kruger, who's the chair of this committee. And it was a great chat. He's very open to us working together so that, no one's left behind and that we're coordinating our efforts, and that we're making our needs known to the federal and provincial governments as well, so that we have a fair shot at the funding. So he's very keen to work with us and with our committees. And so, and I believe he's invited us to their next meeting in March 27th. Sorry. While I'm here, I'll just explain the reasons for the Intergovernmental Affairs Committee meeting too. It's kind of along the same veins. We have a lot of needs, and I want to make sure that we are identifying them quickly and developing a plan to advocate to other levels of government our needs. We do have a lot of new MLAs that I believe we need to communicate with and just make them aware of who we are, what we are, and what we need, and establish really good relationships with them.
And Vice Chair Clute, if I could just jump in on the second part of the question, which was related to work plan impacts. And so I will separate them out a little bit. So In terms of the Intergovernmental Relations Committee, at this time, I really view that to be largely the work of the CAO as well as the Manager of Communications around the advocacy that we already do through LMLGA and UBCM. So I don't anticipate that will be too onerous, and it aligns with the EA Advocacy Committee. On the Flood Resiliency Committee, this one is a little bit more of a question mark if it goes beyond anything besides advocacy. Certainly, I have always been delighted that this board has such confidence in the organization that we have experts in every imaginable field in the building. But in terms of flood resilience, we certainly have some folks in the building that could support that. But really, I think what is going to be required of this one is more collaboration with municipal staff if we're going to go too far into the technical side of things. And frankly, on a regional advocacy basis, the FVRD has never really, I'm going to say, had the authority to speak on behalf of the municipalities in terms of flood resilience. So I think this one will be determined as the committee gets going and works through it. But I think in supporting Chair Ross's vision in terms of connecting with adjacent regional districts and getting an understanding of what everyone's doing around in this flood space, I think is very important.
Thank you, Ms. Skinnaman. That answered your questions. Okay, Director Horn.
Thank you. Fully support this. I have a question which, depending on the answer, I may have a follow-up. There is the fourth bullet point suggests collaboration with other orders of government. Makes complete sense to me, but perhaps a bit of an oversight. The question if the chair or staff discussed whether or not there might be value here for this overarching committee to coordinate efforts amongst, I believe there are 3 different tables talking about separate portions of the region around flood management right now. And so unless there's a rationale for it not being included, I think that might be an amendment here, but I'll pose that as a question first.
Ms. Skinnaman.
Through the chair to Director Horn, there was no intention to limit the collaborative efforts of this committee or the scope. Certainly, this terms of reference was modeled on what Metro Vancouver is doing to bring some alignment there. So I would just defer to Chair Ross in the establishment of this committee if that was something that would be reasonable to assume that any other flood-related tables or working groups.
Go ahead, Chair Ross.
Thank you. Yes, absolutely. I'm certainly open to communicating with other groups and other efforts for sure. And I think things will become clear as we have our first meeting of this committee and we all have a good discussion in it and we can bring it forward to the board.
With that in mind, Mr. Vice Chair, I think what I would suggest, or what I'll do then is I'll move that the terms of reference, I guess that this would likely be an amendment to the original motion if I ask for an addition to the terms of reference. Is that correct in the views of our corporate officer? Because it says the Flood Resiliency Committee terms of reference.
Through the chair to Director Horn, we could take it from direction or as direction from the committee to include that as part of the terms of reference that come up perfect. Actually to the.
Okay, what I'm going to suggest in the verbiage can be worked on away from the table is that there be an additional bullet point that says essentially that we coordinate where possible flood management tables throughout the region. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments from directors? Director Stevens.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate the focus on the advocacy side. I think one of the challenges that we have is we have some challenges, obviously, on the Sumas Prairie issue, but we also have some significant challenges on the Fraser side with erosion arcs and some of those challenges. But to the point that Mayor Horn was making is we also have all sorts of tables. And so I I think that if we can coordinate, especially with our member municipalities, but we also have some orphaned areas of the regional district, I think collaboratively, like our voice can be a little bit louder as a region. That adds. So I wouldn't view this as maybe more work for staff, but I think more of a collaboration with to reinvent the wheel, I think would be a mistake. So to the points that have been already made, but the advocacy side, I think I really see value in that, especially when, you know, our situation in Abbotsford, you're partnering with Merritt and Princeton, but you're still feeling like you've got an uphill battle. And especially with our friends on south of the border, we've got some real challenges because that's where the majority of our water is coming from in those events on that front. But we also have to be very, very aware of the Fraser challenges because those challenges don't go away. So I think the advocacy side is going to be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Good remarks, everyone. Director Pranger.
Thank you. I'm fully supportive of this committee and the work that they're going to do. But I'm hopeful that each of the municipalities and the regional EA's areas also get their input to the committee so that when we speak with a louder voice for everyone in our regional district. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Pranger. Anyone else wish to speak, comment? Just looking where I'm at. Do we call
just
Director
just
Horn,
a
go
quick
ahead.
follow-up just for staff through the chair. Will the language I described show up in the regular meeting item, or will it be the exact same as here?
Through the chair to Director Horn, the intention would be to update that before the board.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Just for clarity, look to you. Call the question. We have a motion. Okay, all in favor? So that carries unanimously. Next item, please.
5.3 is the 2025 holiday closure of the FARD corporate offices.
Move Director Pranger, seconded Director Wardenberg. All in favor? Thank you. Next item, please.
6.1.1 is an information item. It's the Invasive Weed Control Program 2024 year-end summary.
All right, information item. Anybody have any comments, questions? Director Castle.
Thank you. I just have a question through to staff with regards to how cold it gets in the winter. If we don't get a good freeze in the winter, am I correct in saying that could impact the mosquitoes? Oh, sorry, we're on weeds. Sorry.
I think
it could impact the weeds too.
Still a valid question with
Okay.
respect to weeds, and perhaps,
Sure.
and I know that staff put an awful lot of effort into these reports, so I'm sure that Mr. Lilly would love to dive into that question.
I'm already freaking out about the mosquitoes in the spring. So, but I'd love to hear what the lack of cold weather could do to the invasive species.
Thank you for the question. Through the chair. With mosquitoes first. Lack of cold this winter will unfortunately not really affect the mosquitoes. Locally, it's totally dependent on what happens in the rest of the province and depends on the snowpack and how slow or quick the snow melts and comes through Freshette. Local conditions probably have some effect, but not until like May or June, as soon as the Fraser River starts to rise. With regards to invasive weeds, I don't know is the answer. I would guess it doesn't have a significant impact. I think these invasive weeds are very hardy. They are successful for a reason, and they can adapt to many, many conditions.
Thank you. Director Dickey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just through to staff, I was curious about the invasive hogweed. Is there any chance this might be wiped out? I see the numbers are dropping rapidly.
Hey, through the chair. Yes, we are very hopeful that we can work towards eradication. Many of the weeds, it's still a sort of a contain and management situation. Hogweed, we're making really good progress. It helps that it's a very big, visible plant. It's easy to see. People can identify it if it's in your backyard. You can see it from the roadside. So it has some assistance in being able to eradicate it. That said, I think we're down to, we were able to eliminate a third of our sites pretty much this year from doing annual monitoring. It's been gone from those sites for about 5 years. And so now we only have to monitor it every 5 years from now. So we're hoping the next few years that we can add more sites to that long-term monitoring. I believe the seeds are viable for like a decade. So it's really hard to say it's eradicated until you have like 10 years of no plants. But we're working on it. We're making pretty good progress with hogweed.
Good. Thank you. If I might,
Yeah, go ahead.
Chair, yeah. So there are a number of other species which are not native, but are rapidly expanding in the Fraser Valley. We look out at the flag iris on Shiam Lake, and there's got to be millions of them out there. Is that not a concern? And do we just abandon these efforts when they get to a point where they no longer are, well, blackberries are not native things. So the question would be, are we just focusing on things that have a deleterious impact on livestock and humans, or?
Yes, again, through the chair, there are a lot of invasive weeds out there. Our program has prioritized those that have a significant either health effect, like with giant hogweed, that have significant economic impacts, or can damage infrastructure, like with knotweed. There are other species that can be added to the list if we wanted to increase cost of the program. That said, I think you mentioned blackberries as one. At some point, they just become endemic. They just become naturalized, and you start to kind of not even see them anymore. And it's a shame. There are still a lot of groups, like the organization here is still involved with like Fraser Valley Watersheds Coalition. There's other groups, Fraser Valley Invasive Species, that do localized cleanups. And so when there is interest at a local level, maybe not regional, but at a local level, if there's a desire to clean up blackberry, yellow flag iris, there are groups associated with ourselves and that are in the community that can make a really good dent into those problem species.
Good, thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions, comments? I'm moving on to the next item, please.
Thank you. Item 6.2.1 is UBCM's Regional Community to Community Program, FVRD and Staalis Forum Grant Application. There is a motion for your consideration.
Before I move this motion, moved by Director Wardenberg, Director Smith. Questions, comments? All in favor? So that carries unanimously. Next item, please.
6.3.1 is the Air Park Hangar Lease Renewal for Valley Helicopters.
For a motion, Director Horn, Director Smith. Questions, comments? All in favor? Any opposed? Carries. Thank you. Next item, please.
Moving down to reports by directors.
Great. Director reports. Wish to speak? Nope. All right. Next item.
And moving to public question period for items relevant to the agenda. And we'll just turn things over to our Deputy Corporate Officer, Lauren Olenek.
Thank you, Ms. Kinnaman. We do not have any members of the public joining us in person. We do have one member of the public joining us online. So this would be your opportunity to ask a question relevant to an item on the agenda. If you do have a question, I just ask that you hit the raise hand function. And while we give them a moment, I will note we have not received any written correspondence. And it appears there are no questions.
Thank you.
So looking for a resolution to close the meeting.
It's moved by Director Castle, seconded by Director Pranger. All in favor? Thank you.
Okay, just give us a minute to set up the room.